Howdy Beans, sometimes this podcast contains adult content, like the odd and maybe a few, so view discretion is advised. But I always say, enjoy the show nonetheless. Howdy Beans, and welcome to a zombie-filled brain parasite episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Luke from the Crypt. Hope you're doing disastrous and horrible and disgusting today. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at Night of the Creeps from 1986. Oh, God. Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. I had a bit of an infestation I had to deal with. You might have heard me went through the window. I didn't do a double tap, but I can't really see. No, the body's gone. Oh, that means he's going to come get me later. I barricaded the door, and we seemed to be okay, but we had a bit of a zombie infestation there. It was very much of a Night of the Living Dead moment there, but I've looked around and barricaded the windows, and yeah, we should be all right. Anyway, where was that zombie so far? Well, by looks of it from all my bloodied notes, thank you very much for that, you horrible living mess of a heap of gunk. He was about to say, housekeeping. Was he? Yes, he was. So make sure to keep me safe and zombie-proof free and alien brain parasite free. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating, to follow the podcast, and to leave a comment down below on Spotify. And make sure that you follow me on TikTok. I'm still freaking things out there, but hopefully by the time that you're hearing this, I would have had a bit more of a footing and you can hear me there. So again, it's just the Howdy Beans podcast on TikTok. So as I mentioned, we're going to look at Night of the Creeps from 1986, or at least my zombie alter ego said, not me, because I'm human. I promise. My blood's I don't know. No, anyway, my blood is red, not green or anything pustule, so we're okay. Anyway, so it is spooky season, week 2. Honestly, this movie, I've never watched it. I haven't. I've got no sort of prior experience with this film at all. I don't know anything about it. All I really know is that I listened to That Was Pretty Scary by Freddie Prinze Jr., and it was one of them, when you listen to it, you're like, that feels like a bit of me. And it's been on my list for years. It was actually, I'm planning to look at this movie last year, but I never really got round to it. But I love a zombie movie. And it's kind of a travesty that I haven't covered a zombie movie yet, because they're my favorite genre of horror. To be honest, I just love zombie films, which is funny because I have a really sort of irrational fear of being eaten alive. It's irrational because I'd never go into the savannah to be eaten by lions and tigers and stuff like that. I'd never go in the woods in America to be eaten by a bear. And even though I think sharks are not as bad as Jaws makes them out to be, I wouldn't go paddling around in the ocean. So there's a high likelihood that I'm not going to die by being eaten alive. But it is a fear nonetheless that I have. So you would think that I shouldn't be terrified. I shouldn't like zombie movies, but I really do. It's because I just love gory films. I think that's what it is. I think I'm just a freak, to be honest. I just love gory movies, and some of the best gore is in zombie movies. And in my opinion, actually one of the best zombie movies I've ever seen is Train to Busan, which is a wonderful, incredible, it's just strange to say it's wonderful because it's a zombie movie, film from South Korea. It's absolutely incredible. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. So I've got really nothing to say about this film other than I heard it was a zombie movie or a zombie-like sort of film, and that I would really, really enjoy it. So that's what we're here today. As for the movie synopsis, so this one's a bit of a short one, a bit like Critters last week. So, alien brain parasites that enter humans through their mouths are turning their hosts into killer zombie-like slug creatures, running amok on a university campus during Pledge Week. That on its own just sounds incredible. So they have to do for the mouse, which means I can imagine there's going to be a lot of grabbing of sort of like really horrible looking disfigured mouths trying to sort of coddle and like, kiss people to do parasites. And then you got zombie slug-like creatures as well because it's brain parasites. Like, I love it. And it's during like Pledge Week, so it's like very much like a prom movie as well. So there's going to be a lot of teen hijinks as well. So there's probably going to be a lot of boobies. We will see. There always is in these 80s movies, especially when teens are involved. I don't know why. It was the 80s. Let's just not get into it, shall we? And then as for the cast, so we've got Jason Lively as Chris, Tom Atkins as Ray Cameron. I'm sure I've reviewed other movies with Tom Atkins in, specifically horror films. I can't think off the top of my head, but I'm sure I have. You've got Stephen Marshall as JC, Jill Whitlow as Cynthia, Wally Taylor as Detective Landis, Bruce Solomon as Sergeant Raimi, Vic Palazzo as the coroner, and Alan Kesar as Brad, and Ken Heron as Johnny. So that is your cast of what I could find. This one was a bit difficult, kind of like Critters last week. It was really hard to actually find anything in terms of production. So I haven't really got a lot to say on the production of this movie, sadly. And I'm finding that with a lot of these older movies, a lot of these sort of BTS sort of cult classic sort of films, is the fact of unless you're like big like Halloween and stuff like that, there's not a lot of background information on a lot of these films, which is a shame. But what I could find I feel like it's somewhat interesting. So Night of the Creeps had a $5 million budget and was filmed in various locations in and around Los Angeles, including the University of Southern California and an abandoned Woolworths. But I haven't heard the word Woolworths in a long time. I didn't even know Americans had Woolworths. But in abandoned Woolworths buildings from February to April 1986. Post-production faced issues with pacing, leading to executives' intervention and a disastrous test screening, which resulted in reshoots and the addition of a tool shed scene. The film was released in theaters in 1986, but struggled to find its audience, only gaining widespread popularity after its home video release. And to be honest, that's the same story for a lot of movies, to be honest, because that's the way it used to be back in the day in Hollywood. A bit of behind the curtains information for you, a bit of trivia. Unlike nowadays, where it's like for a movie to be considered good, it needs to do really well at the box office. It needs to make like 400 to 500 million dollars. It depends on how big their budget is. It needs to make gangbusters for it to be considered a success. Back in the day, though, it wasn't like that. Back in the day, if a movie came out and it didn't do so well, that didn't matter because you would recoup the money on DVD sales, on VHS sales, and things like that. And that's how you get a lot of cult classic movies. And that's how a lot of movies end up getting sequels, was the fact of it didn't do very well on cinemas, but loads of people went out and bought it on video and DVD. And that is why the movie is so widely loved and critically acclaimed. And that's the way it used to be. It's not anymore, sadly. Sadly, it's the fact of when a movie comes out, if it doesn't do well, that's it, and people forget about it and move on, which is a shame. So that's where this movie sort of got its legs, shall we call it, was through sort of video home release, basically. And that's what I can really find, to be honest. The director and writer was Fred Decker. Producers were Charles Gordon and Donna Smith. Cinematography by Robert C. New. Music by Barry D. Volzos. And that's it, really. So I've got nothing much more to say about the production. It's a zombie movie. So whether it be good or be bad, it's going to be brilliant, I'm sure, because it's a zombie movie from the 80s. And these 80s movies, especially when it comes to zombies, was just outlandishly bonkers and silly and gory. To be honest, I still kind of kick myself. And I shouldn't really call myself a zombie fan because I haven't seen George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. To be honest, I haven't seen them, and the only one I've seen is The Return of the Living Dead, and that's only because I watched it accidentally on TV one night because I couldn't sleep. So I need to go back and watch those movies, and maybe I will next year. But I am excited for this one. So that's all I have to say about this episode. Going to go off now and watch Night of the Creeps. And when we come back, as always, I'll talk about my first impressions, talk about story, production, overall thoughts, and just see if it's everything that I hope it is and more. So I have my fingers crossed, and I'll see you all in a second. And welcome back, creeps and ghouls and fools. So I've now watched Night of the Creeps, and honestly, oh, it's a joy. It's an absolute joy. I had such a fantastic, brilliant time with this movie. Like it's phenomenal. It was giving me the same vibes I was getting at the end of watching The Stuff, which just this is why I'm glad I'm doing the podcast. This is why I'm glad I'm watching movies like this, because if it wasn't for this, I would never have seen this movie, and I would have missed out on such a brilliantly wacky, silly, fun 80s cheesy horror movie. It is brilliant. Night of the Creeps is really, really good. I enjoy it. It's funny, it's silly, it's got the gore, it's got the practical effects, it's got the horror to an extent. Like this is not a scary movie. This is a movie that you put on in the background during Halloween, that you've got a Halloween party on and you put music on, or you put like a horror movie on in the background, and it's that sort of background movie. But that's not to sort of discredit it at all. It's still a monumentally brilliant horror film, to be honest. And by the end of it, I'm left thinking, I'm like Woody in Toy Story 2. I'm like, yeah, hey, let's have another one. And then Stinky Pete's like, well, they never did another one. I'm like, why? And it's like, well, they just never did. And I'm like, because it's really, really good. Like I know there is. I did do my research into it. There is a unofficial sequel to this movie called Night of the Creeps 2 Zombie Town, but it's not affiliated with this movie at all, so it's an unofficial sequel. So I'm not going to watch it. But there was also some rumblings that I found as well online that they were planning on doing a sequel, bringing the original cast back. Will they do it? Won't they do it? I don't know. But then again, Shudder exists, and Shudder have been known to bring back a lot of the classic 80s sort of horror movies and do sequels and reboots that with them. So there's a potentiality there. But yeah, generally first impressions, it's really, really good. It's funny. Like that's one thing I wasn't expecting, was just how funny it is. Like you've got Tom Atkins, who plays Ray Cameron, who is the sort of cop detective in this, and it's when he's on screen, it's like Frank Drebin from the Naked Gun series or Police Squad. It just he's so charismatic, witty, and the one-liners are brilliant. And then you've got like JC, which is like Chris's best friend. Like JC and Chris are like the two semi sort of hero sort of good guys of the movie. JC, like he's comedic. Like he is a sort of guy of like, I'd love him as a best friend because he's charismatic, he's funny, he's charming, he's goofy, and he's like he'll do anything for his best mate Chris. Like he is the perfect wingman. Like Chris falls in love with Sympathy Alec, who is the sort of love interest of the pretty girl, popular girl of the movie, and Chris wants to talk to her but doesn't know how to. And JC's like, no, don't let me handle it. And he basically does like the Barney technique. Have you met my friend Ted? He does that, sort of thing. And it's really, really cool. And it's just funny. The puns and the gore is amazing. Like you got these little. It reminds me of Slither. Of like you got these little slug parasite sort of creatures that get into your body, and when they're in, they take over you, and then they just incubate for a bit. So you walk around. You walk around looking for hosts, looking for bodies, and then once the sort of parasites are ready, they just burst out. Like you just fall over, and they just pop out your head, and then they slither everywhere, and they go up people's legs and go in people's mouths, and then they infect people, and that's how they infect it. So it's kind of like a zombie movie, but it isn't a zombie movie. Like they don't bite you; they more just kind of burst where there are loads of people, and then that creates more. But the gore is so good, and it even goes as far as animals as well, and it resurrects the dead, which is great for the ending as well, which I'll get onto the ending eventually. But they resurrect the dead. So if there's a dead body somewhere, they'll go in the ground and they'll find it and they'll bring the dead back to life as well. But like when the dead comes back, they don't come back as in just mindless. They continue. They go to where they were doing before. And I'll explain what I mean by that sort of in a minute. But yeah, everything in my first impressions generally is like, I love it. Like I'd happily watch this again. This was a lot of fun. I'd highly recommend it. And to be honest, I'd even go as far as to say, don't listen to the rest of this review. Go off and watch Night of the Creeps. if you can find it online, watch it. You'll absolutely love it. It is brilliant. So good. To be honest, as sort of for the story. So the story, I love how it begins. So it begins on a spaceship. And for some unknown reason, and you don't know as to why, you've got these potato-looking sort of alien creatures. You've got one of them that's running from corridor to corridor with this tube. There's something in this tube, and these other aliens are chasing it, trying to sort of shoot him and try and stop this alien. And the alien locks himself behind a hatch into sort of, I would say, it is a escape pod sort of area. And the other aliens are like, we can't let the experiments escape, blow the hatch. So they blow the hatch. As they blow the hatch up, the other alien puts the experiment, the tube, into an escape capsule, shoots it out of the spaceship and it out into sort of deep space. And then it goes to Earth. And it goes, and I love this. It goes Sorority Row 1959, and it's all in black and white because it's the 50s. It's all in black and white. And you've got the sorority girls, they're all getting ready in the makeup. It feels classic 50s sort of Invaders from Mars, sort of, they came from space, those sort of 50s movies, and I absolutely love and adore that. So it's black and white, and there's radio on the radio's like, there's again, classic 50s. We break this breaking report to let you know that there is a murderer on the loose, and he's carrying an axe, and he's traveling on this highway, and he's this far away from town. Stay inside at all costs. And obviously, it being a teen movie, they don't stay inside. They go to the makeout point. So you've got these two characters, the pretty girl and the jock. They go to the makeout point. A copper finds them, and he's like, "Oh, it's you," and she's like, "Oh, it's you." And they've got a little bit of chemistry there, but it's not really explained until later on in the movie. And he goes, just head on home, just go. You know there's a killer out on the loose, just go. And while he walks away, they're arm in arm, about to make out. And then they see a light come out of the sky, and it crash lands behind them like an asteroid. And obviously, what do you expect? They follow it. So the jock, drives over. He goes to find it, finds the wreckage. He sees these little weird things crawling around, and one of them goes into his mouth. And then you got the younger girl. She's in the car, and she's got the radio on, and it goes, this breaking report. Sightings have said that so-and-so maniac killer is on Highway 66, and he's 3 miles away from this place. And she looks up, and it's so well done. She looks up, there's a sign that says 66, and she's like, oh no. And there's a sign next to it, and then she puts the headlights on, and it says 3 miles from so-and-so, what it said on the radio. She's like, oh, no. And I think his name's Brad. I'm just going to call him Brad because it's easier. Brad, come back, Brad, please. I want to go now. I'm really spooked. And then there's one bit that really made me laugh. She goes, Brad, if you come back now, I'll let you find on my breasts. I giggled because I wasn't expecting it. It came out of nowhere. And then the camera pans out, and you got this psycho guy. You never really see his face, this psycho killer, and you got this axe. And she's freaking out. She's beeping the horn. This guy hasn't come back. And he's coming up behind her, and eventually the camera goes back to her, looking at her from the other side of the car, and he's there, and he just gets the axe, swings it, sort of takes her head off, and then it ends. And then it jumps back into colour to the same street, Sorority Row, 1986. And sort of story goes from there, and we get introduced to Chris, we get introduced to CJ, we meet Cynthia, sort of the popular cool girl, and then we meet... again, this guy, his name's Brad. I can't remember the name of the other dude, but this guy is named Brad. He's the jock, the dickhead, really. The sort of the arsehole. And you meet all these other frat brothers. I think actually looking at IMDb now, so the other guy, his name was Johnny. So yeah, Johnny, not Brad, but still. For that guy, his name was Johnny, but this guy, his name's Brad, and you've got him and his sort of frat mates, and they're all just douches, to be honest, like sort of people that you just don't really want to know, and because they're assholes. And Cynthia's going out with Brad because, of course, she is. When Chris really, really likes her, and they go, well, the only way that Cynthia's going to give us the time of day is if we sort of join a sort of is it an alpha beta? I don't know, sort of a club. I don't know what you Americans call it, really. You join us, it's not a sorority, but you join one of them sort of things, a frat house or whatever. So they go to pledge. Turns out Brad is the leader, and he goes, hey, if you guys want to join, you've got to do something for me. I want you to go over to the science block. I want you to get a body from the morgue, and I want you to take it to Alpha Sigma or whatever it's called, and dump the body there. And then if you do that, you're in. So the two lads go. They break into the morgue. They find a sort of secret. So I do wonder the question. There's a secret base underneath the school, right, in the science block, and they're doing cryogenic sort of testing, which is all sort of very futuristic, even now. But back in the 80s, that was very futuristic, and even CJ makes the comment of like, this is like space age kind of stuff. Like, what's this doing down here? And I'm asking the same question of like, well, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, why have they got this body on ice, and why is it there, and is it a military thing or not? Because it never really explains it. And CJ, he messes about. He ends up defrosting this bloke, and they try to steal him. But as they re-steal him, he comes back to life, tries to grab him. So they sort of shit themselves. They run. Then the scientist comes back, and he comes in. He doesn't have a name. Just a young scientist comes back, and he sees the body on the floor, and then he gets attacked, and then he gets like. We don't really see him get attacked, to be honest. But then the detective gets a phone call, Detective Ray, who is, it turns out that the Detective Ray, who's played by Tom Atkins, is the same bloke from the 50s. And you get so many flashbacks with this bloke. And I'm not going to recount the whole movie because I'm not the Doom generation. They do way better than I do. But you get a lot of flashbacks with Ray. And it turns out that like he was the young cop, and he saw his sort of high school sweetheart, which was the girl in the car. He saw her get killed by the axe murderer, and he's been having flashbacks, like proper Vietnam flashbacks of it since, and it's never really left him. And it's I don't know how to explain it because I don't really want to go into major spoilers because I want people to watch this movie, but it links to his sort of trauma and the way he is. I'm gonna have to leave that because I don't really want to. I feel if I say any more there, it'll go in spoilers because it is quite interesting. It's quite harrowing, sort of actually. To be honest, he has this moment with him and Chris, and they have a sort of a talk. Well, more so Ray sort of confesses to a lot of things he probably shouldn't confess to. It's quite harrowing, to be honest. But it does link into sort of the story later as well, so it all makes sense. So sort of skip over that. But yeah, like once like the sort of icicle man comes out and he's sort of defrosted, he goes to the sorority house because that is where he was. That's where he was going to go. That's where his love interest was. So he goes back there. He throwing pebbles at the window. Cynthia, she's there now. She opens the window. He's there. He falls off and smashes his head. These little parasites go everywhere, and it's like that for a lot of it, really. There's a lot of it is a lot of slow burn. Like you can hear these little parasites, little slug things, crawling around, making little noises, and they're attacking people and killing people. But how they do it is they just tend to crawl up you, and then they go through your mouth. So as you scream, like, "Oh my god, this is a zombie!" Your mouth's wide open, so like they jump and crawl down your throat. And there's a lot of there's some deaths where I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, you know that guy's a douche. And there's other deaths where you're like, oh, I really like them. To be honest, like I won't spoil any of the deaths because I don't really want to spoil it for anybody. But if you watch this movie, you know who dies. But you know the dickheads, they get their comeuppance, which is probably the best way to say it. You know, the frat dudes. But yeah, like once it gets going. You know, the gore, the sort of practical effects is really, really well done. It's creepy. It's very 80s. It's very cheesy. There are many moments in this movie where I'm like, that's rad. That's really, really good. Like you've got like a corpse that's been dead for decades is walking around chopping people up with an axe. And when he turns around and he sees the detective, he smiles, and like you actually see, you know, a smile on his face, sort of thing. And I'm like, that is so well done. And that's a really cool effect. It's really creepy. And like when they're, it's not as like it's not as gory as I would have hoped. So in terms of, there's not moments where you see like arms falling off, like people getting ripped to shreds. Like it's not a zombie movie. Like it feels like a zombie movie, but it isn't a zombie movie. Like if you was to look at the poster of this film, you would think, oh, it's like a zombie sort of parasite sort of movie. You think there'd be a lot of them. There isn't. There's a few here and there, but there's not a lot really, to be honest. But there are some good kills. There was one where Chris is getting attacked and she tries to save Cynthia. So Cynthia falls off this one zombie. And he's got a lawnmower, and he basically he revs this lawnmower, gets it going, tips it up, and literally just puts it on top of this zombie, and he chops him up and kills all the others. One thing that gets me as well, so how you kill these brain parasites is you've got to set them on fire. They don't like heat, they don't like fire. So Chris and Ray, at first, the detective, they're blowing these sort of, say, zombie sort of parasite people's brains, like they're blowing them in half with the shotgun blast. And then sort of as the slugs and parasites go everywhere and start falling on the ground, Chris has got a flamethrower and he's sort of he's torching them, which is fine. But then I'm sitting there thinking, well, why not save the ammo? Why not just use the flamethrower anyway and just burn them? Because it's going to kill them anyway. So why not just sort of do that? You know, I think it'd be like it'd make more sense. But no, like it's a cool practical effect. You know, there's one where Chris tries to shoot a guy, he misses him, but blows off half his one side of his face. But the zombie just smiles at him and keeps going. So that they have to hide in a shed, and that's what leads to having to use the lawnmower to basically chop the sort of zombie parasite thing in half. But it's really good in the kills. How can I explain it? This movie is only an hour and 30 minutes, and it gets going. And once it's going, it's going. And I think it's the only real negative thing that I've got, which isn't really negative, more just, again, it's just me wanting more, really. Me just kind of wanting more gore. Me wanting more deaths, more sort of zombie creatures, you know. Like all the people that you'd want to get infected. But like also, it would be nice for a few more sort of people, a few more undead, sort of kind of like George Romero sort of thing. Like I would like more of these sort of zombie parasite creatures attacking. And this is why I say that I would love a sequel, or I wish there was a sequel, which I'll mention in a minute. But yeah, so the story, like I said, I've skimmed over a lot of it. I don't really want to go into majorly because this is one of them movies that I'm like, if you haven't seen it, you've got to watch it. It is really, really good. And obviously, I'm not the Doom generation. They do a lot better at doing like shot for shot, scene for scene when it comes to films. But even though I've left things out, just know like you're going to have a fantastic time with this. It's funny, it's silly, it's witty. There are boobies in it. Not many boobies, but there are boobies. So if you like that, there'll be some there. What else? I'm trying to think. But that's pretty much it for the story, to be honest. Like I said, the practical effects and gore and that's all brilliant. Right. So one thing I wanted to mention as well, before we get to my overall sort of thoughts, this one's going to be a very short review because, again, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But there's two different endings. So the ending that I watched was the alternative ending, which, since watching the original ending, I think the alternative one is far superior. And I'll explain why. So the original ending of this movie, which you can find on YouTube, was well, I won't say what happens, but basically the day is saved, and you've got the two hero characters. So you've got Chris and Cynthia. They're standing outside the sorority house. They're in an embrace. They've got other people around them, and the police and the fire brigade and all that around them, and sort of they're hugging and embracing. And while they're looking at this fire, looking at this carnage, this dog comes up and goes next to Cynthia. And Cynthia sort of goes, "Oh, hey, boy," looks down, and then notices that this dog is half eaten, half dead, half sort of destroyed. And she goes to scream, and as she screams, the dog opens its mouth, and one of these parasites basically jumps at the screen, and it goes black and roll credits. And for anybody, and obviously because I haven't really explained it, but the reason why that's sort of important is the fact of that dog is seen throughout the movie being infected. The dog is what infects the sorority lads, all these lads, because they're all on a bus going to this. So the idea behind it is they're all on this big bus going to this sort of big sort of prom that they were going to have. And as they were there, the driver sees this dog in the middle of the road. He skids, he basically turns the wheel a bit too harshly. The truck tips, hits a lorry, and everybody dies on it. And then this dog basically climbs through the window, and infects everybody. And then a bit later, you get all these zombie sort of frat boy, half dead frat boys. Some of them, and again, it's so good because you got one of them's missing a leg. One of them is like, you can tell that he must have fell, landed on the glass, and as the bus scraped across the tarmac, his face just scraped because he's got no nose, no front face. He's just like a big smear with eyes, really, which is brilliant. And so I love the fact of that they bothered to put details into the practical effects of the sorority guys, like when they were dead, like of the dead people, of like each one of them looks like they died a different way. Like I said, one guy looks like he's had his face smushed up against the concrete as it was sort of coming to a halt. One guy's missing a leg. Other guy's got like eyeball sort of hanging out, ears missing, ripped clothes, big gashes, things like that. Of like the attention to detail is like, they're not all going to look the same, or they're not going to be perfect because they were in a crash before obviously they were turned. So obviously they're going to look sort of different. And there's another great scene as well, which I know I'm talking about the endings, but there's another great scene as well where you've got Ray, the detective. He's inside the sorority, and you got all the girls panicking, freaking out, and he's like, "Go out the back way." And all the girls screaming. He's like, "I don't know what you're screaming for. I've told you, go out that way." And the one girl has basically stayed, and he says to this one girl, let's call her Judy because I can't remember her name. He goes, "Judy, you go lock that door." So she goes to lock the door. As she goes to lock the door, one of the zombie blokes breaks through, tries to grab her. So he saves her. And you got other guys coming through, and he's trying to attack him. He's run out of ammo, so he turns around, tries to do all the ammo. And Judy, she ends up attacking him. It turns out that she's got one of the parasites in her already because her cat was killed by one of these things that had a parasite in it and infected her, which happened a bit earlier in the movie. So she's attacking him, and all the others are really close to him, and they're going to sort of spread the seed, shall we say. They're going to give him one of the parasites, and he looks up and he sees a picture of his lost love, and he just goes full Rambo. And again, every time he's on screen, it's wonderful. It's absolutely brilliant, and because it is like Police Squad, it's funny, and he just gets up, freaks out, gets his gun fully loaded, and he's just like bam, 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 bam. He goes around in a circle, boom, 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 and the camera comes back, and eventually something else happens with Chris and Cynthia, and it cuts back to him, and he's just surrounded by dead bodies and corpses, and blood all over him and all over everyone. He's just like proper heavy breathing, and and he just looks at that picture again, and you can just tell in his eyes like, okay, we've got to end this. It's got to, like, this guy's living through a lot of like trauma, Vietnam sort of flashbacks constantly. And it's probably why he's so sarcastic and so sort of full of dark humor and a lot of comedies, because he's been living with this sort of burden, which I don't want to spoil it because it is a big twist in the movie, but he's been living this big burden since like the 1959. And it's really, really well paid off. Anyway, so as I say, for the ending, that was the original ending. The dog comes, she screams, parasite goes to her mouth, I imagine, then it ends in credits. The version I watched was, which I didn't notice at the time, was the alternative ending. So in the alternative ending, same thing, they hug and embrace and they kiss. Then the next scene is, and I won't say who it is, but it's a character who should be dead but isn't, is walking along, and they're barbecued, man. They're cream crackered. You know what I mean? Like, they are just destroyed. Like, they are just like imagine if you had a sausage and you left it on the barbecue too long, and it's all black and burned and horrible, basically like that. This character falls over, the head hits the ground, explodes, parasites goes everywhere, and they start scurrying into this what looks like a field, and the music kicks in. It's really sort of creepy music kicks in, and the camera pans up, and there's a big bit of lightning, and the lightning illuminates the sign, and the sign says cemetery. And then as the camera pans up even more, you can see these little things that are going into cemetery, and like I said, they can bring back the dead, so they're going into cemeteries, they're going to bring back everybody. And then they're thinking, okay, it's going to end here. It gets better. A spotlight comes out of nowhere, and it starts searching all around this cemetery. Then also now, just out of shot, comes out of shot, the spaceship from the beginning of the movie comes out, and they're looking everywhere. And it's a big sort of mothership sort of spaceship, not a small one, like a big one. Comes out, as it looks around, and then it ends, and then you get credits, and then you just get the sound of the parasites slithering around and making their little noises. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's a better end than the original, because the original just is like, oh, it doesn't leave it open. It's just kind of fact of, it's one of the things of like, oh, she gets infected and it all happens again. Whereas this ending really leaves it up of, it reminds me again of Critters, in a way of Critters 2, in the way of, it leaves it open, the fact of, it isn't the end of like these parasites. They're going to infect all the undead people in that cemetery, and the cemetery is huge. So it's going to be like George Romero's Return of the Living Dead. They're going to rise and they're going to attack everybody, and they're going to spread. And also you have the aliens as well. So the aliens are coming. So it's like, are the aliens going to come and try to hunt down and kill all of these parasite experiments? Like, would we learn more about these aliens, about what this experiments is? Because it kind of reminds me of Alien in a way, and the engineers, because the engineers engineered the parasitic black goo, which was then used by David to make the perfect organism to make the xenomorphs. So it's one of those where I'm thinking, well, is it going to be like that? I'm trying to think of ideas of what the sort of sequel could be or could have been. Would it be like that? Would you learn more about that? Was it just an experiment that's gone wrong, or is it like a biological weapon, or is it an experiment of like, this is a life form they found on another planet, sort of thing? And that would have been great as a sequel, because you would have had a feeling of aliens, and then you would have had a feeling of Critters, but you would have had like George Romero's Return of the Living Dead, where you could have had potential smart zombies, parasite sort of creatures running around. There's so much potentiality of what could have been, that it's one of those where I was kind of left thinking, oh, but it's a shame that we never did, to be honest. And that's where kind of I'm left off really with my overall thoughts. Is I had an absolutely brilliant time, and I'll definitely watch this again, and I highly recommend everybody and anybody to give it a watch. And that's why, again, I've left off a lot of the spoilers in the story, because there's a lot of surprises and twists and a lot of really good bits in this movie that I don't really want to spoil for anybody, because it is really, really good. It's just, like I said, I just wish there was just a bit more parasite gore. I just wish there was more death, more dismemberment, that sort of thing, because I know they're not zombies, but a bit more zombie-ish sort of stuff, really. More hordes, them attacking the sorority, more people getting infected and dying than just the frat kids, really. Like, I'd love a bit more of that. And also maybe just a bit more of an explanation of, was it a military experiment? Because it would have been cool, kind of like if you've watched The Blob, or if you listen to my review of The Blob, the military get involved, and the military come around and they try to cover it all up, and they try to quarantine the town. That could have been a good thing as well. But again, it could have been many things. It could be down to budget, time, stuff like that. Many reasons as to why they didn't do it, or maybe that just wasn't the plan. I don't know. But either way, I had a fantastic time, and I really do recommend it for everybody. There are like a few more extra things to mention, kind of like, again, another thing that reminds me of Police Squad, of Naked Gun, that there's a guy who's next. So when you first meet the young scientist that's died in sort of the cryo lab, you've got this one detective who is just eating, and he's kind of looking around, like every time you see him in a scene, he's just eating. And I'm thinking, like, you dirty bugger, like you're right next to there, like to a freshly dead body cadaver, one hand's touching the body, other hand you're eating a club sandwich. And then every scene after that, he's doing something disgusting, or he's eating, and he's always looking. He's like, well, why do you always see you eating? Like, what are you doing? He's like, it's not my job, boss, sort of thing. And in many moments of like, it just feels like there's so many homages. And again, it's funny that it's come up twice. If I had a nickel for every time this came up, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's funny it happened twice. You know what I mean? Like, the Critters 3 was homage to many different films. This has homages to like the classic movies of like the 50s, of like they came from outer space and things like that, and the Blob and stuff. Those sort of black and white movies, but also it has homage to like Police Squad, which you never thought, Naked Gun, and like George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. And I know it's not an homage to Sliver, because Sliver came years later, but you know what I mean? Those sort of parasitic sort of movies and stuff like that, like it just feels like a love letter to horror movies of the 50s, of the 60s, of those sort of times, really, those black and white classics. And I really appreciate for that. I do, and I wish I could talk more about the story and stuff like that. But I generally just I don't want to sort of give anything away because I really had a lot of fun with it, and this is one of the movies that when you go into it not knowing anything, you can enjoy it more. You know, so yeah, my overall thoughts is if you haven't, give it a go. It is really, really, really good, and I've just got a smile on the face. I'm just left being like I enjoyed that so much that I was left wanting more. I was left wishing for more, hoping for more, wishing and sort of hoping that there was a sequel. But we never did, sadly. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like you can't. Sometimes these things will happen. Maybe the movie didn't do very well, or maybe they just wanted they only planned to do one movie and that was it. Who knows? But I had a lot of fun with this one. Anyway, as for trivia, before we end, so I have a bit of trivia for you. So, when Fred Decker was asked during an interview why CJ, who is played by Steve Marshall, is handicapped, he replied, "There's no reason aside except that we just don't see it. You can make a movie with a character who is handicapped without the story being about the fact that he's handicapped." So, yeah, so CJ in this story, he's on crutches, and it does come, it does come up. Somewhat relevant to one bit, which I can't talk about because it's spoilers. But a little bit of a not emotional, but sort of a hard hitting sort of moment for one of the characters that comes into it. Yeah, like he is sort of handicapped, and like the jocks make fun of him for it, but it's never really sort of brought up. To be honest, it's more just the fact of he is on crutches, but he's a great guy. You know, I'd love him as a best friend. To be honest, I think he's brilliant. Then we have, so all the last names of the main characters are based on famous horror and sci-fi directors: George A. Romero, Chris Romero, John Carpenter, and Tobe Hooper, James Carpenter Hooper, who was CJ. Then you have David Cronenberg, so Christina Cronenberg, which I noticed that when I was like, her last name's Cronenberg, which I didn't notice the rest of these, but still cool. You've got James Cameron, so you've got Deputy Ray Cameron, John Landis, but you've got Detective Landis, Sam Raimi, Sergeant Raimi, and Steve Miller, Mr. Miller, the janitor. So it's cool, isn't it? Like nice, again, homages to sort of recognise the greats, you know, the ones who the best to do it, sort of thing, you know. And I love that. A fair share of the film was shot in an old Woolworths department store that was converted into a makeshift studio. I'm sure the same thing happened in Critters 3, which again, I think it did. If I remember correctly, I'm sure Critters 3 was shot not particularly in an old Woolworths. Maybe it was an old Woolworths, but was shot in an old was it a school or was it a department store? Anyway, but again, I've got 4 nickels right now, and I don't know what to do with them because nobody takes them here in this country. But I have four times, four coincidences. This has come up. Who knew? Anyway, Tom Atkins' favorite. This is Tom Atkins' favorite of all his movies. I'm sure I've reviewed other movies with Tom Atkins in. To be honest, I do recognize him. I'm trying to think what other things I know I've seen him in other films, but I don't know if I've actually. I think I have reviewed other movies that he's in. No, none are coming up at the moment, but I'm sure I have. But either way, he's a brilliant actor. And then finally, so the graffiti on the wall of the men's room where CJ is trying to escape a number of slugs reads, "Go Monster Squad," alluding to Monster Squad in 1987, which was also directed by Fred Decker. So yeah, that is everything really for trivia. And that is basically everything for this review. I had an absolutely brilliant time. I really, really did. Like I said, left wanting more, and I wish there was more. Like I said, I have sort of heard rumblings. I've read a bit of rumblings online that Shudder is potentially thinking about doing a sequel, bringing back a lot of the old cast to do it. Again, I don't know how they would do that. They could probably bring back Chris and Cynthia, but I'm not so sure about other characters. But either way, you know, if they decide to reboot it or bring it back, I'd love to see it. I really, really would. And like, I haven't got a Shudder membership, but if they did do it for this, whether it is a sequel or a reboot, I would generally consider subscribing to Shudder just to watch it. to be honest. And I don't know why I haven't, because I love my horror movies. And so many people keep telling me how good Shudder is. And I haven't. And it's apparently not that expensive either. It's actually relatively cheap. And some of the movies on there are meant to be really, really good. So maybe I should do. Maybe I should subscribe to Shudder. Maybe this will sort of turn the page. I don't know. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you all really, really liked this episode. I'm not going to tell you what is coming next week because, as always, I like to keep it a surprise. But maybe, you know what, I'll give a few hints, possibly. So, no, actually, no, I won't. Reason being, I can't think of any that are not spoilers. Because I was going to say, oh, it's got this person in. And I thought, no, that's a big spoiler. And I was going to say that, and I was like, no, can't say that because that's a spoiler too. No, you're not getting one. I'm gonna tease you. You're not going to know. So next week is going to be something in the 80s, but it's going to be different. And that's what I'm going to say on that one. So until then, I will see you all very soon. Sleep well, sleep tight, and don't let the parasites bite, because if they do, well, I can't help you, really. My shotgun's all out of shells. The zombie that I killed will be banging on my door soon to get back in. So I've got to go off and kill me, or dead clone of me. And I'll see you all very soon. Fingers crossed I'll see you all next week. Until then, bye-bye.